I mix what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like. I mix what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like. All right, what's up, world? Welcome to another edition of I Mix What I Like Live. Again, I'm Jared Ball. Happy to be here at I Mix What I Like for all your relevant social media and imixwhatilike.org to make sure you are caught up with everything that we're doing. But let's get into this a little bit because I admit I'm a little anxious and a little excited. But before we get into it, I do want to remind everybody or let everybody know that on February 12th, when Judas and the Black Messiah officially releases on HBO Max, Rosa Clemente and I are going to host a watch party. So you can, we'll put out all of that soon enough, and you can hopefully join us for that and get even more insight and maybe some different perspectives on the film, given that Rosa not only knows the history very well, of course, but played a key role in helping the process of the film along, and is officially, I think, named an associate producer of the film. So she was there for at least some of the filming as well. So we'll get some of that insight. And Fred Hampton Jr. is set at some point. I think we're going to be able to get him to come back and join us as well to talk more about his thoughts on the film. And I saw him on the panel for the film at Sundance last night, and I'm very interested to get him over here to ask him to elaborate a little bit more on what he, I think, did not say or have enough time to elaborate on that panel. So, and again, there will be some spoiling in this discussion. So if you need to, obviously check on out and come back later. All right, so I'm going to go through the notes I took while I watched the film that streamed officially at Sundance yesterday. And then obviously if you have comments, questions, criticisms, responses, I'll address them in a minute, and we'll chop it up. And then obviously there will be more conversations, I'm sure, as we go forward. So this is just one. Anyway, so first we should remember the movie's title, Judas and the Black Messiah. So it's telling you from the beginning, Judas, or William O'Neill, is the focus of the film, and the Black Messiah, who in this case is meant to be Fred Hampton. And of course, that is a reference to what they do. I will acknowledge that they acknowledge, in other words, they make reference to the counterintelligence program. Nope, that's not the one I wanted to share. Let's see, which I thought was an important, at least a first step, that there was an acknowledgement that in the film of the counterintelligence program, because even some of the more popular academic literature that has come out in recent years that we've been critical of here does not acknowledge the counterintelligence program when talking about people, or at least sufficiently when talking about people like Malcolm X or Kwame Ture. But as you can see here, the reference is very clear. First, as it relates, now, of course, what they don't mention in the film, and this is something we can come back to, when they mention the counterintelligence program, they don't expand on its full definition and its full range of activities. So they don't talk about the history of the counterintelligence program. They don't put it in any kind of context in terms of the history of Hoover. They mention the pre-COINTELPRO activities of Hoover in the state, related, of course, to Marcus Garvey, the anarchist movement, the communist movement, the socialist movement, the labor movement. all forms of what is called the radical left were assaulted by the counterintelligence program. They don't talk about that. They just acknowledge that it existed and that it played a role in the surveillance and ultimately the assassination of Fred Hampton. But as it says here, the goal was to prevent the coalition of militant black nationalist groups. In unity, there is strength. Interesting that they use it. A truism that is no less valid for all its triteness. An effective coalition of black nationalist groups might be the first step toward a real Mau Mau, Black Revolutionary Army in America, the beginning of a true Black revolution. And this is where of course the subset or the subtitle of the film comes from. The second goal, to prevent the rise of a messiah who could unify and electrify the militant black nationalist movement. Malcolm X might have been such a messiah. He is the martyr. Dr. King is mentioned, Stokely Carmichael, Elijah Muhammad, et cetera, and so forth. My favorite one that I always just like to mention, particularly in my classes, is that the fifth goal says here, is to prevent long-range growth of militant black nationalist black organizations, especially among youth. Specific tactics to prevent these groups from converting young people must be developed. I always think that's a particularly important point to remember. So anyway, I just quickly, that's where, of course, the subtitle of The Black Messiah comes from. And of course, in this context, Fred Hampton is not the subject of the film, despite, I think, the way it's been projected and promoted and described. All right, so before I go any farther, I want to step back and quickly say again that as I do look to apply and maybe even critique my own Vernon philosophy of black media avoidance, which basically just argues we should not look for ourselves in these commercial products. And we should not look for our particular histories, any group, but in this case, particularly black people, in the histories, in the content of these commercial products, and that they play a very decided political role. That they're not here to only inspire revolutionary change. They're here to impose dominant narratives of even subject matter we would be interested in or feel is our own. So I think it's important but the Vernon philosophy of black media avoidance is not a call for a physical boycott necessarily, as much as it is an intellectual, if not full boycott, an intellectual protective barrier of sorts, so that if we engage these media, it's less on the basis of looking for something and more on the basis of critically assessing what is trying to be done. So in this sense, I'm not advocating that people don't see the film. In fact, I don't know necessarily quite the opposite, but certainly I'm just simply saying I think we should just get our critical lenses up. And in particular, why this is important is because of a product like this that is produced very well, that is, I think, for what it is trying to do, it is well done. It's well acted. It's well shot. I think it's exciting. It's flowing. It makes several allusions to things that are important to people like me, and even to just the historical record. But ultimately, in a way that appeases what is the goal of these products, and that's not what I'm. So again, I'm not saying that Shaka King or Ryan Coogler or any of the actors involved were attempting to do something wrong or malicious. What I'm saying is, once you put it into the machinery of these institutions, that manicuring, so to speak, is going to take place almost automatically. So when you set it up, so for instance, when Rosa told me she was going to be helping with this a couple of years ago, and when Dr. Ray Winbush told me at one point that he had taken a meeting with Ryan Coogler and was going to support this project, what I said to the both of them, included in what I said to the both of them, was a suggestion that they not do a 2-hour film, a standard cinematic theatrical film, and that they maybe take advantage, if that they were determined to go the commercial route, that they take advantage of some of the other options. And the one example that I made, and that I would continue to make, is that or compare it to, is that what I would have preferred that they do, and we can come back and talk about why, is, for instance, some of these shorter series you see on Netflix, for instance. My favorite one among, or at least one of them, is Wormwood. You take the historical reality of the state of state intelligence agencies and psychological warfare and chemical warfare and surveillance and assassination and CIA, NSA, and FBI. You get all this good stuff mixed in with some documentary storytelling dealing with the family that was involved. And then you get some dramatic storytelling as well. So you sort of get the best of both worlds as they blend back and forth between straight documentary and dramatic dramatization of what has been discussed in the documentary. I thought that would have been a much better approach. So instead of trying to pack so much into 2 hours, you could stretch it out over 5 or 6 hours, even as was done with the horrific Netflix Malcolm X documentary. I mean, it was horrific. And instead, which again contradicts my own point here. You could stretch it out and make it horrible, as was done with that. But potentially, at least, you would give yourself more room and more time to do more things. So for instance, while Shaka King, the director, and Ryan Coogler, the producer, and several others involved with supporting the film have been popularly discussing it as a biopic, a Fred Hampton biopic. It isn't. Just objectively, it is not a biopic. You can't call it a biopic when you have no discussion of Fred Hampton as a child. You hear nothing about his parents. You hear nothing about his upbringing. You hear nothing about even his early teenage youth activism, where at 14, he's already in the NAACP and already showing up in intelligence agency reports. So you leave all of that out. The transformation that he goes through, where he talks about being born not in the so-called hood, but in the Maywood section of Illinois, which is a suburb, which is, at least historically, was, I think, considered a more maybe working class or solidly middle class community. So I would think it would be an interesting story to tell, to show how someone born in that middle class, as he said, he called it a bourgeois background, how someone born into that could not only become radicalized, but radicalized beyond the NAACP and radicalized beyond even where the traditional civil rights movement was at the time he was assassinated. But again, the film is still Judas and the Black Messiah. So the film immediately, from the beginning, it doesn't open up on Fred. It doesn't open up with Fred's story and Fred's life. It opens up with a discussion of William O'Neill. Now, he's the character we see get the transformation, sort of. We see William O'Neill going from a regular, unaffiliated street hustler, where, oddly enough, paradoxically enough, he, in his pre-agent role, acts as an undercover FBI agent to roll his own community. So it's an interesting paradox. But we see his emergence from street criminal into being recruited by the FBI and turned into an agent against Fred. And then there's this one scene, and this sort of speaks, there's this one scene that speaks perfectly to my own contradiction. And I think the struggle that we all face with these products. There's a scene where you're seeing Daniel Kaluuya as Fred Hampton. And other than the size, like, he's shorter than Fred, and I feel like he maybe put on too much weight to be Fred. He seemed a little chunkier than Fred. I don't know, whatever. But he got I don't know. I felt he did well with the passion and the sound and the cadence. But so you get this strong performance of Fred Hampton speaking from a stage, and then the camera brilliant. I mean, it's a beautiful shot. And the camera pans back to show you that you're watching as William O'Neill is watching Fred from the audience. And the point of that, the point I'm getting at with that scene is that it's to me the perfect moment of showing This is not a movie about Fred Hampton. This is a movie about the agent watching Fred Hampton. Which is why, as I predicted before the film came out, I think, and I'm more or less correct, the Fred Hampton we get is the very well performed and delivered, but still almost caricatured form of Fred Hampton. We get the speeches, we get the rhetoric, we at least get passing reference to words like socialism and armed struggle, and communism, or critiques of capitalism. We get passing references, but no sustained analysis. We don't see him going from a young child learning. We don't see him studying. We don't see him anything. We don't even get, for instance, we don't even get like what would have been a slick that you could have done with more time. We don't sort of I don't forget the industry term for it, like the parallel story of the rise of the Black Panther Party. Like it could have been slick, for instance, to show the Panthers forming as Fred Hampton is growing up or coming up, because it's just a couple years later, between 66 and 68, that Fred is in and already assassinated. But you could have seen, we didn't get that. So we don't, Mark Clark, who was killed also that night, he's barely introduced in time to be killed. Interestingly, Bobby Rush and Jesse Jackson don't show up in the film at all. Now, I don't know if this was hateful. I don't know what this was, but we do know that the night that Fred Hampton is assassinated, or at least the story goes, the police also raided Bobby Rush's house, but Bobby Rush wasn't home because he was, as some put it, hiding or wherever with Jesse Jackson. It's not mentioned. They're not even mentioned in the film. I'm not even sure. I don't even know how you do that, but they're not mentioned. There's no, so I don't know what was really going on with that, but I thought that was conspicuous in its absence. But again, from the beginning, you're setting it up as Judas and the Black Messiah, told as a movie through the lens and the story Monique, the agent. From the beginning, it's set up to have, I think, a low ceiling for how good it could be. But that's slick, because then you can have all of the talent. And excuse me, let me. Close that up a little bit there. Anyway, but you have all of the talent involved with the filmmakers and the writers and the actors, who I think again do a great job. But their talent is channeled towards or funneled into a machine process that is already structurally limiting, just by setting it up as a story about ultimately William O'Neill. In fact, during his Sundance panel last night, Fred Hampton Jr. talked about, for instance, some of the tensions. Then this is something I would want to talk with him about. He called it, he said it was a tough pill to swallow, as he talked about knowing the histories and the context involved, but basically losing out to the creative needs or interests of the filmmakers. So I'd like to hear more about what he thinks those losses or struggles were, why that pill was so hard to swallow. Anyway, again, I think that's part of the issue that we have here as a struggle with, to struggle with. So yeah, it's told from the perspective of the police. We get sort of, as I wrote here, Hampton on film on parade. He's just sort of performing. It's well done. But other than, I think you only get like 2 scenes with him, building with Akua Njiri, or formerly Deborah Johnson, his future wife. And I think that's meant to, a substitute for all of the lack of story that we get about Fred. So they show us a couple of quick scenes of the two of them coming together and falling in love, which is great. That's fine. But it's so little, and it almost felt forced and unnaturally stuffed into the film, because again, to me, it read at least like we have to do this because we can't totally omit Fred's, outside, the life of Fred Hampton outside of his moments on stage, or in a particular, a moment of organizing, for instance, with the gangs, and so forth. but they don't, but there's really not that much time left, because you have to spend so much time making quick references to the counterintelligence program, making quick allusions through televised statements of H. Rap Brown and Angela Davis, which I always think is very interesting, because again, Angela Davis was never in the Black Panther Party. I know that she's an icon. She's connected to George Jackson and all of that, but again, if we're not going to actually deal with the Panther Party itself in a movie ostensibly about the Panthers, why would she be one of the handfuls of people? In other words, we don't see Erica Huggins, we don't see Sophia Bakari, we don't, we do see a little bit, I think, of Kathleen Cleaver, or maybe I'm thinking of something else, but maybe. They definitely don't touch on Elaine Brown, so there's a lot, so I thought that was interesting, and an interesting choice. And in fact, Fred is introduced via a TV clip making a speech. He's introduced on TV. So again, he's introduced almost as a product in a product, but not as a subject, and nothing about his background. We get nothing about his life, nothing about his parents, nothing about his childhood, nothing about his family. In fact, we see in one scene where they go to William O'Neill's white FBI agent handler's home, where he's holding his baby, we see more of his home life and his family life than we do of Fred's, which but again, by telling the story through William O'Neill and through his white FBI agent handler, the from my point of view, the ceiling already is set on how good it could be. Also, a quick moment where the traditional or that it's almost stereotypically a cliche delivery of the revolutionary nationalist versus the cultural nationalist is just thrown in there. Where we get this at the beginning, where Fred Hampton makes some disparaging comments about a brother in a dashiki and what the dashiki is or isn't. And I get all of that there was this real tension. But at the same time, I feel like, again, in a context where you're not explaining it, in a context where you're not explaining in anything even about the Panthers, much less any of the other so-called cultural nationalist groups like us or whoever else, if you're not going to do all of that, then that kind of scene just makes it look like this is a shout out to the young people who might see this, who would want to make fun of the so-called hoteps and fake wokes. And even as someone who may be, I don't know, more biased on the materialist side, I love my African clothing. And I love what African people wearing African clothing means and represents, even if their politics aren't mine. So I didn't like that. I just didn't like that. It was, and it is used where at least Deborah Johnson's character, Dominique Fishback, the actress, she has a line in there where she basically says to Fred, you might want to be, nicer to people you're trying to build with. But again, that tension, that thing isn't discussed, and then it's just, I don't know. I just thought it was just anyway. Similarly to the scene I just described, as in my notes here, there's a scene he meets with the Crowns, the gang, to build with them. And after the Crowns meeting, Fred is literally faded into the background of O'Neill's in-car story, his being discovered. Okay, so what my notes were there saying is that the scene where Fred meets the leader of the Crowns, which should be a positive, strong demonstration of what Fred was really doing in trying to build the relationships with the gangs. And I hear Bob Brown's and other people's voices in my head saying that, that this story is somewhat mythologized in itself. But if you're going to tell it in the film, then it should be told for what its mythological purposes were, that, beyond what I think the film does. Now the artists may argue, if they were here, they may argue, well, this was done because this is how you artistically tell this story in a way that won't turn people off and bore them. But to me, it just stood out as painful that the scene is almost, to me, ruined because it's used as a backdrop to the real tension being, will William O'Neill be discovered by another member of the gang who previously knew him as an undercover cop? So instead of this meeting being Fred and Bang and the Panthers and this, they're coming together and the threat that really means. And again, if you've seen Warriors, the classic film, The Warriors, the reason they kill Cyrus at the beginning is because of that powerful statement he's making. There's 60,000 gang members and only a few thousand cops. Can you dig it? Like, that's the power that should have come in that scene, but they ruin it because there's nothing there other than William O'Neill maybe being discovered. And the tension behind all of that. He's sneaking with his gun. Somebody's about to rush him. And then the meeting is literally interrupted as somebody starts to discover him, but is halted for breaking protocol. It was so frustrating for me to watch that. And then, like I said, he is literally faded. They fade the camera, they fade the whatever into the scene where the next scene is Panthers, and to their credit, it was a sister doing it who was, leading the grabbing him up, putting a gun to him and saying, "Are you a snitch?" But if it's a biopic about Fred Hampton, or if it's something trying to talk about the Black Panther Party, this is not the scene. This is not the scene we need in a film that's only 2 hours long, that is already, what I should have done the next time I watch it, when we watch it again, we should do it. Just like I did with Malcolm X. Why does it take 90 minutes for Spike Lee's Malcolm X to get to this? It's 90 minutes into that film before Malcolm is Malcolm, and the film's almost over. So it's the same kind of thing here. How many minutes of screen time do we actually get with Fred being Fred, as opposed to just being in the background while someone else's drama is playing out, which is, again, Judas and the Black Messiah. There are among the positives that I would argue, at least, are some reference. I know Rosa has pointed this out already, to the Real Rainbow Coalition. The Real Rainbow Coalition was not the watered down corporate grab that Jesse Jackson created. It was the unity of Black, brown, white, and other radicals who would create this rainbow. Maybe we should even talk about the LGBTQ community about that. I just thought about that. Can we blend these traditions at least? Can the rainbow not become stripped of that particular meaning? Can we blend them and radicalize them on that basis? I don't know. Anyway, just a quick thought. But anyway, I was glad to see that. And then you do get to see reference to the Young Patriots, the white Appalachian, so-called hillbillies who eschew their whiteness to a certain extent and join the movement. The Young Lords, Cha-Cha Jimenez is mentioned. He's on screen. He actually speaks briefly. I would say that you could say, look, I guess it is a positive, but I don't believe, as others argue, that this will lead to people studying. So maybe it's not as much of a positive as I would like it to be. But because I don't think that people are going to see that and there's going to be this en masse move to study Hampton and the Young Lords, et cetera, and so forth. Otherwise, we would have seen a revival of study of Malcolm X beyond just the symbol in the early 90s, and I don't think we saw that either. The film does a lot of slick stuff with good cop, bad cop, and it looks like I was going to say, no, I think we're good. I thought anyway. I thought we might be interrupted with some sound here, but I don't know. But they do some slick thing in this movie with the good cop, bad cop thing. Whether it's in the struggle over the argument over snitches in the Black Panther Party. They deal a lot with George Sams and Rackley and that whole that case which historically is not addressed in terms of what happened historically or how it's interpreted or what people have said about it, but they do use the internal struggles of the Panthers. See, again, this is so slick and I think dangerous because they don't really talk about the Black Panther Party. They're not teaching about the Black Panther Party in any meaningful way, but they use the internal struggles that were imposed on the party by COINTELPRO in creating agents and the suspicion of agents, and the attack and in some cases killing of suspected agents they use that as a backdrop to leave room for where they can for space for the white FBI agent and for William O'Neill to play sort of a good cop, bad cop versus with themselves, and then as good cops versus the bad cop of J. Edgar Hoover, and leave room for this sort of, as Shaka King and Ryan Coogler and others have already been saying in their interviews, to humanize William O'Neill, to sort of show the struggle that he's in, that he finds himself in, and the dangers and anyway, that he finds himself in. And then by slickly making, and this is really, there's actually, I think the worst part of the film is the makeup of Martin Sheen as J. Edgar Hoover. I think they messed that up. I don't think Sheen gets it in this. This was the one character that like really was hard. It just broke out of, for me. It was the one character, like every time I saw him on screen, it was like, okay, you're clearly not Hoover. You're clearly Martin Sheen in bad makeup. But what they do slickly is, as bad as Hoover was, they reduce almost the entire state apparatus to him, as if there was no broader effort among the state apparatus within, Wild Bill Donovan and that whole crew, like the like there were no Dulles brothers, and like none of these people existed. It was just all Hoover. And once Hoover was gone, the FBI could go back to being a very good and respectable institution. And the white FBI agent who feels guilty, who's shown struggling with moving ahead with the assassination plot, because he's already felt that they've shown that Fred is not a terrorist and not, so that they can leave room for that again. Why do, and then as they said, leave even more room to try to humanize William O'Neill. Why are we, again, in a 2-hour film that's supposed to be about Fred Hampton and the Black Panther Party, why are we trying to humanize William O'Neill's character, the undercover agent character? I do think Shaka King has raised some interesting points in his interviews about the complexity of Black struggle, where there are people in the community who, as is the case with O'Neill, who are encouraged through threat and bribery and scare tactics to become snitches. But if we haven't taken the time to humanize Fred Hampton, if we haven't taken the time to explain in depth the politics that Hampton was working with and that the Panthers were working with, and the struggles to which they were connected, if we're not doing any of that, then I think that spending the time to humanize William O'Neill is unfortunate. Then we see Fred goes to jail, and we see again who the movie is really about, because he literally leaves he's out of the movie for what felt like a long time. I should have clocked it, but next time I watch it, I'll clock it. But he just disappears from the film, and we get to really see that the movie's about William O'Neill. Yeah, and then I said, yeah, women with guns. I did like that they showed women with guns in the shootouts. Women were key figures with the shooting and with the calling out of O'Neill as a snitch. But again, even in those moments, it's told through William O'Neill's engagement in shootouts. It's in that context, not in the context of Fred or any of the other Panthers. All right. Just a couple other things, and I'll start to look at what you all have been saying and see if there's anything I can address. So, like, right, I said, where is Jesse Jackson and Bobby Rush? I said I would have rather have heard from Sophia Bakari than Angela Davis. Oh, the LA Times review that just came out. The headline says Judas and the Black Messiah gives the Black Panthers a searingly powerful close-up. False. That's patently false. There is no close-up of any Panther, and certainly not of the Black Panther Party. So this is sort of what I'm saying about how, when, I saw the Shaka King interview with Amy Goodman in Democracy Now!, and she's just fawning all over the film. and gave him, a 15-minute interview after talking with, Jeffrey Haas and Flint Taylor, rightfully so, maybe for a separate discussion, about their new discoveries that Hoover did in fact play a direct role in the assassination of Fred Hampton. But largely what I think we're getting both from the mainstream commercial press and in this case with Democracy Now! And the alternative press is just this willingness to fawn all over the film and the filmmakers without really offering up any critical assessment or anything meaningful at all, really. So then I'll wrap here by saying I've made a couple of notes here about how we might try to use this film. So for instance, and so I said, why is the BPP a threat? So for instance, we do get the one-liner from who in the film, the Black Panther Party is the greatest threat to national security. Well, I think then our role has to become having enhanced and elongated, extended conversations about what were the Panthers doing that made them a threat. Dhoruba bin Wahad has pointed out a number of times that, people want to point out, look, they weren't just about guns. They were about breakfast programs and sickle cell testing and housing and all of that. And that's what made them the real threat. And then Dhoruba would always say, but we were about the guns too. So I would like, it would be great to have more discussion of that. I would still like to see us have more conversation around the ideas of the party and Huey Newton and intercommunalism and socialism and anti-colonial struggle, and so when the movie makes allusions to in a disparaging way to Eldridge Cleaver being in Algeria, well, why are the Panthers welcomed in Algeria? Why was just before that Malcolm X so welcomed all throughout the African world? Why were the Panthers a direct offshoot of Malcolm and in that worldview? So that's what we could do. What else was and is being done to destroy organizations is, I think, a question we could try to address even more in our post-film conversations. In other words, let's not leave it to suggest that what happened to Fred Hampton and Mark Clark ended when Hoover died, and because the film almost, I do think, wants you to think that without J. Edgar Hoover, the FBI wouldn't be involved in this kind of stuff. They really do, I think, try to, even in the way they shoot him in that in a couple of scenes, that sort of big brother, he's on, the big, the camera looking up at him, and he's, we have to get them, It's like they make him look like an insane madman, which of course he was, but that was because the state that is an insane madman of sorts put him in place to be that. The late great John Judge used to say, you can't have organized crime without organized police. So you can't have a lunatic like J. Edgar Hoover without an organized state apparatus that rewards and promotes that and allows for that to occur. Youth and struggle against a beast. So that was another thing that I wanted to make that I think we should make more a note of, maybe than we already are, or to the extent that we do, that these were young people. Fred Hampton was 14 when he was in the NAACP, 21 when he's assassinated. The mistakes, the correct things they did were all in the context of what people were doing when they were 30 years younger than I am. I mean, that's still crazy. I mean, I think about it literally every day. I think about how I am now, 10 years older than Malcolm and when he was assassinated, 30 years older than when Fred was assassinated. I don't think they get enough credit for that. And that the COINTELPRO statement did at one point point out that one of the release documents did say that if the government wanted to make clear that if Black people want to become revolutionaries, they'll become dead revolutionaries. So there is something that we as we try to speak to young people about this, we should encourage that they be aware that they are being discouraged, even I think in a film like this, from becoming the revolutionaries that Fred is clearly heard on screen saying he is. Which is a contradiction and a paradox and a struggle we have to have. We need to talk more about socialism, armed struggle, revolutionary nationalism, intercommunalism. and the connections that the intelligence agencies have and have played in interrupting these efforts and movements. So, all right, I'm 10 minutes over what I had intended. I wanted to see if I could do that in 30 minutes, but those are just some of my first thoughts. I'm going to come back through the comments in the chat. If you have any questions that I haven't addressed or criticism of what I've said, I'm happy to check it out. Let's see. Yeah. I mean, I think Chairman Fred is going to have he's going to have a look. I can't wait till we can rap with him again. I think he's going to have an interesting struggle on his hands as he tries to walk that tightrope. Yeah. Okay. So did you see anything? Let's see his comment. One of the film that was made. So his unambivalent comments make you more inclined to watch it. Yeah, I mean, I think he was. Yeah, I'm not saying don't watch it. I'm very interested to. Yeah. No, well, so are you saying I'm misinterpreting what Fred was saying? Because I thought he was very clearly saying that he struggled with what the film was doing, but maybe that's fair. Maybe I misinterpreted that. And yeah, a miniseries, and I really would encourage you all to see the check out Wormwood if you haven't. It is incredibly well done, and that story is amazing. Yeah, I mean, it's one of my favorites. In fact, I might watch it again today. Let's see. Yeah, good, Rosa. Glad you could come through. Let me know if I got anything wrong or that whatever. It's crazy. Yep. Yeah. Rosa's not in Hollywood. Rosa's not Hollywood. Let's see. Yeah, that's right. They but when I would have loved to see a scene. And I'll tell you the truth, Rosa, and anyone else. When I had heard that he was going to be mentioned, Cha-Cha, I kept picturing a scene depicting what occurred in real life, where they were actually in jail and met and talked. But that would have required, I think, a film to really be about Fred and have room for that. I mean, you could have taken out so many different scenes of from O'Neill, for instance, and put in that scene. And it is, yeah, I admit, I agree with this, Ricky. Yeah, that Davis is always positioned as a member of the BPP when she was not. And again, on some level, we have to deal with the contradiction that she is out and free and living her life, and Rochelle McGee is not. And anyway. They centered the traitor instead of centered. Yeah, that's right. That's exactly right. It was very and again, it's the problem is that the film is not bad. Like, you can't just walk out of it and say, oh, this is some garbage. They can't act, they can't shoot, they can't move, they can't tell a story. I mean, you can't do that. So it's definitely going to be anyway. Let's see. Yeah, you all are killing it in the discussion. Really about you. Anyway, so I guess that's it. Let's see. Wait. No, not at all. I saw a different panel, and his comments were all overall. Oh, really? Okay. Well, good. And obviously, I have reached out to him. He's aware that I'm reaching out to him, and we try to. In fact, I think we're trying to get the conversation with me, him, and Rose. So I would love to hear what he has to say. And of course, I'm entirely open to having my own criticism critiqued. So it's all good. The live should be Judas and the Black Messiah. The gaps, no slaps. Okay, good. We'll take that under advisement. So, all right, good people. That's just those first thoughts. I definitely look forward to future conversation and everybody seeing this film. Is the movie in the same category as American Skin One Night? No, see, okay, actually, you know what? I'm glad you asked that because you know what? I do even have a note here. I'm even skipping over one of my notes here. This I was really struggling with because no, I would not put it in the same category. And maybe it's my bias about Fred. Maybe it's a bias that I'm having about the quality of the film versus these other ones. But I don't put it in the same category. And maybe I just need to think about more why. For instance, but I will say, look, there are some similarities in the sense that one of the points that I did make note of here is that outside of the final assassination of Fred, which they did include in the film, and I was waiting for, and if they had not included it and done it right, I would have gone even more berserk in my hatred of, like I would have gone full hatred of the film. But they include it. And I think they include it in a way that is powerful. And that part I won't spoil, but I think, at least in this detail, and I think they include it in a way that is incredibly powerful and incredibly historically accurate. But well, I guess I do have to spoil that because the one problem is, well, the one positive of that is that it's not on camera. So much of the violence suffered by Black people in these films, we have to see all of it. We see it all in its brutality. We see Black son get killed in American Skin. We see all of the enslaved Africans getting their teeth bust out and raped and brutalized in Birth of a Nation. You know, we see all of that. But when it comes to, as is the case in Judas, when it comes to Black revolutionary violence against the state, or in this case, white police officers, we don't see it. In fact, the one scene where you're supposed to see a white cop get shot to death, it's off camera. So I've noticed this is a trend in Hollywood as well. Black people get beaten up and dragged and hung and all kinds of stuff. But even in a film like Birth of a Nation, which was supposed to be ostensibly about an enslaved rebellion that involved killing, we don't see it. They literally just show the blood splattering up on the wall. Now, in that final scene, we do see, when they shoot up the house, we see Black bodies getting shot up. We see wounded. We see Mark Clark get killed. You know, we see all of that. But in any instance where a white police officer would have suffered any violence, they don't put that on camera, which I think is a very interesting. So no, but at the same time, I don't put them in the same category. I didn't feel American Skin. I felt traumatized. I didn't feel any trauma in this. Maybe it's because I was prepared more for what I was going to see. Maybe it's because again I'm biased in terms of the history of Fred Hampton. I don't know what it is. And maybe I just need to think about it. Maybe it's just a contradiction. Maybe I'm just contradicting myself. That's also possible. I don't know. Yeah. No, they did not mention anything about Chairman Fred's tombstone getting shot up. They didn't mention anything about, of course they didn't, you know, they show you Fred Jr. at the end and mention the Black Panther Cubs, but they don't, again, you could have taken time in this story to tell the story of what happened to Fred Jr. and his setup and incarceration. I mean, if this was a movie about Fred Hampton, we would, I think, have time for his own life and then what actually happened to his son. But we don't get any of that. And I think, not that this is a conscious decision of the filmmakers, but I think that the industry itself prepares the projects it will allow to go forward on the basis of what politics they obviously do and, more importantly, don't share. So if you can tell the story of Fred Hampton without talking about his son, without talking about the continuing struggle of his son in that house or the tombstone, look, and I don't know if I agree with Rose on this, but I hope she's right. And I'm certainly willing to, and I would certainly want to help her be right in this. I would love to be wrong in this. So I hope the movie will help Chairman Fred finish his documentary. I hope it will help him build his organization. I hope it will help all of us move to our left, wherever we are now politically. I am skeptical, but I look. I hope I'm wrong. I'm wrong plenty of other times, so why not be wrong about that? You know. Well, I appreciate that, Rosa. I appreciate that, and when we all get together, we'll do more. I'd like to see it again. I do want to see it with my little stopwatch, like I did once upon a time for Malcolm X. But anyway, let's see. Anything else? Any other questions? I really appreciate the discussion, even that I'm not even a part of in the chat. I think that's dope. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, definitely. Only bad people. Right. Yeah. No, revolutionary violence. I think it may be among, topics like the labor movement and, Black history and radical histories in general. It's just something that's very difficult for I think, anybody to get into a commercial space. Yeah, my point about the stopwatch is just something that I have done in the past with my own little look at movies, like I did with once years ago with Spike Lee's Malcolm X. I wanted to see how long it took the film to get to where we saw Malcolm as Malcolm, because I think, again, there is an encouraged, well, we only have a few hours. Let's spend a whole bunch of time talking about Malcolm when he was, a thug or a hoodlum and, sucking the white woman's toes and pimping out the Black girl and all that. Like let's spend all of this time on that. And then you get nothing of him going throughout Africa. You get nothing of him building the OAAU, nothing of him none of that is in the film. And it's like, damn, well, I mean, and it's sort of the same thing I'm feeling about this. This thing with Fred is easier in the sense that there's just nothing about his early life. There's nothing about his own political transformation. You get much more of the transformation in terms of character in William O'Neill. So, anyway, that was my point. That's really my point. So, all right, listen, again, a lot more coming up here on this channel. Please like, share, and subscribe, and please continue to support and continue or consider rather becoming a member. Click that join button. We'll be back very soon with much more. I don't know the exact schedule here coming up, and we've got some things that still haven't been fully scheduled yet. But we will be talking to Taya Graham and Steve and Janice about their new documentary about The Friendliest Town, the new documentary about racism in the Eastern Shore of Maryland. I know they've been working on that for years, and I don't remember exactly who else is coming up yet, but Soot Jali, Dr. Soot Jali is coming up. A number of other people we haven't been able to confirm just yet, but we're working on it. So just stick around, stay tuned. And oh yes, thank you for this. That's right. In fact, we're taping it today. Dr. Sharice Burden-Stelly, her new show, The Last Dope Intellectual, is going to be hitting soon. I don't know exactly when, but I'm very excited to be helping her with that. And we'll see. I'm interested to see how she explains that title, and if in fact she may be the last dope intellectual. So that's coming. You can't find the join button. It may be only on the desktop on YouTube. I don't know. That's a good. You know what? I don't know. That's a good. Why would it not be on the phone? I don't know. But if you can, at some point, go ahead and is that me? Is that tonight? No. Is that airing tonight? It might air tonight. We already taped it. Yeah. We already taped it. I had to look at my calendar. You confused me. We already taped it, so I think that's going to come out tonight. I think so, right? Because the myths about the that's right. Thank you, Ricky. The myths, because we did an interview about the Malcolm X movie, because he wanted to, his show is titled "The Myths of the Malcolm X Film" or something like that. So yeah, that is coming out tonight. Oh, it is only on the desktop? Well, that's silly. Why would they do that? Okay. Well, I appreciate it. It took you forever. I appreciate you finding it and subscribing. I do appreciate that. Yeah, Ben Wahad is a deep brother. He's in the wind, man. I reach out to him on the regular. He knows he's got a permanent invitation. So yeah, okay. Definitely would want to hear what he has to say about this. Anyway, okay, listen, good people. Again, I really appreciate it. You were coming through with the lively chat and the informative chat. And we'll see what's what the next time we go around. So thanks everybody for coming through. Again, special shout out to Rosa for coming through. Unexpected surprise. We appreciate you coming through and look forward to building with you and Fred and whoever else and many more. So definitely check out the film. And let me know if you think I got any of this right or wrong, and join us the next time, and consider joining Rosa and me for the watch party we're going to set up on February 12th. I think that would be a great way to do it. All right. So anyway, like Fred Hampton used to say, to you, we say peace if you're willing to fight for it. So peace, everybody. Catch you next time right here on I Mix What I Like Live. Peace. I mix what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like. I mix what I like, what I like.